Thank you for tuning in. This is the Well Off Podcast. I'm your host, George Masri, and today I interviewed Erwin Szeto. For those that don't know Erwin, he is a realtor who focuses on investment properties. He is the owner of over 40 properties, and he is also the owner of 3 separate companies. So on this episode, we talked about why he started investing in real estate, why he doesn't do any joint ventures, or very few joint ventures, I should say. We also talked about advice he has for new realtors and how he basically started out by developing a niche. We talked about the marketing systems that he follows for his businesses. As you guys know, he's not only a successful realtor, he's a successful investor, and he's got a very successful podcast. So his marketing tips are going to be valuable to a lot of people. And then we also touched on his charity. So there's a lot of good stuff in here for anyone who doesn't know Erwin's story. We break that down a little bit. There's a lot to learn. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. And if you do, I ask you to share this episode with somebody you know that would benefit, somebody who is maybe interested in real estate investing or who would just like to get started in investing. So I hope you guys will share it and leave us a review on the Apple Podcast platform, and on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for all your support. I truly appreciate everything you guys do. And if you guys want to connect with me, then I encourage you to reach out to me on Instagram. My ticker, or whatever you call it, I forget, but it's WellOffX. Well-Off and the letter X, and you can chat with me on Instagram. I look forward to connecting. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Erwin Szeto today. Erwin and I actually met through Rockstar Real Estate. As some of you guys know, I used to work there. Erwin's there. He's known, or was, I don't know if you still are known as Mr. Hamilton. But yeah, that's a little bit of our history. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on the show.
Great. So I know there is a lot that you do. You have your own podcast. You run a real estate team. There's all sorts of stuff. So I'd just like to start off a little bit by asking about your childhood. If you want to tell me a bit about where you grew up and 1 or 2 memories.
I'm a child of immigrants, and they didn't have much support here, specifically in the Toronto area. So we didn't grow up in the best areas.
Yeah.
My earliest memories are from growing up in a bad part of Scarborough, near a bunch of government housing, because houses were cheap. It's not really a memory of mine, but it was told to me later that the home that we lived in, a little tiny 1.5 story, my family had 3 mortgages on it.
Okay.
Like it was something they bought for, I think, like 80 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just times were different back then.
Yeah.
And one of my memories was it came back to me later that my mom operated an Airbnb in our home, right, while we lived there.
Yeah.
So people would rent out rooms, pay per night, and she'd make them breakfast, and there'd be strangers in my house having breakfast with us in the morning. so I'll use that as a memory.
Cool. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Airbnb.
Immigrant hustle, man.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a bit about your journey, because obviously now you are you're doing well. You've done well for yourself the last few years. You're investing in real estate, running a real estate team, doing all sorts of different things. So tell me a bit about your journey. How did you end up how did you end up where you are today?
It's always been it all stems from me being lazy. I want things done quickly and efficiently. So the problem I had was I graduated school during 9/11, right? I was in my final year, expecting to get a really nice job, maybe even make 6 figures, at least get a really good starting pay, because I graduated from business school. 9/11 happened, awful event. Graduated into a terrible job market. My first couple jobs did not do well for me. I remember opening up my pay stub and seeing how little I had. And then around the age of 25, I realized I had to do something else. Like the job wasn't ever going to get me rich. I've always wanted to be rich. So the job wasn't going to do it. And, that's kind of like when we started buying houses. And then the whole journey has been largely around finding ways to be more efficient with both my time and capital to be successful.
Mm-hmm. So I know at this point, like I've mentioned, you've got quite a bit going on. So how do you divide your time today between real estate the investments that you have, between everything else that you have going on in your life?
So I don't like talking about these things because I'm not someone who likes to show off or anything like that, or be seen as someone who's showing off. I am a part owner in 3 7-figure companies that are owned between my wife and I. And we have an 8-figure real estate portfolio. It's and we only have one property that's joint ventured, so it is owned by, the rest is 100% owned by Cherry, myself, and the bank.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot going on. I mean, we have 2 young kids. Like, my oldest is 8, right? My youngest is 6, and we don't want to spend that much time away from them. Or yeah. So how do I divide my time? Mainly, most of my time is divided 50-50 between my real estate business and my Stockhacker business.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I have to make time for my portfolio at times, my real estate portfolio, and also like the stock hacking that I do, and which includes like crypto investing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course there's all the other stuff, family, trying to exercise,
Yeah. Yeah. See
see people.
that's the tough part. Like, because we just had our first child. Our son was born in October. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So I'm like, it's already kind of hard to make time for myself with him being so young.
Mm-hmm.
And I also invest kind of like you, but I guess the challenge right now is trying to figure out, how do I make time to do all the things that I want to do, like be in the gym, or work out, stay healthy, take care of the rental portfolio, take care of everything. And I know you've been doing this for a while. So do you have any tips on how you've been able to do that successfully?
For your young listeners, I would say hustle as hard as you can before you have kids.
Mhm.
Right. I actually suffered from burnout in my early 30s. I actually have scars on my face from coming down with shingles. Right. So my body failed me. My body could no longer handle the level of stress I was applying to it.
Yeah.
I was hustling that hard. Like, doctors are like, we don't see this. Right. And like, I thought I could work harder. So that's not something I would recommend to folks.
Yeah.
A lot of things I could have improved just by sleeping and resting more, and still been successful and not burnt out. But I also have a full-time nanny. I've had a full-time nanny since my daughter was 1 year old.
Cool.
I have a live-in, and she's still with us, and my plan is to keep her as long as possible. Again, she's still live-in, and that gets me a lot of our freedom back.
Nice.
Like, Cherry, my wife, also works and enjoys working.
Mm-hmm.
I know for myself, I'm not meant to be full-time with my kids. So the nanny works for us.
Yeah.
And it's worked out really well, especially with all the virtual schooling and lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay. So tell me, I know you said you don't really love to talk about your holdings or whatever, and not that you have to like dive in and tell me in detail, but tell me a little bit about how you started building your portfolio, and kind of like just an overview of how you've been able to grow it.
Mm-hmm. It actually started with my ex-girlfriend at the time. She graduated a year before I did. So she was already in the path, like, okay, this job stuff isn't enough.
Yeah.
So she bought their first investment property, and I thought it was a terrible idea. I thought stocks were the way to financial freedom, massive worth and net wealth and all those sorts of things. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit, and my stocks got whacked. And at the same time, our real estate did fantastic because it was a credit crisis. Credit crisis meant people could not get mortgages, so everyone had to rent. So then, like, wow, our rental business is doing fantastic. And at that point, we had around 5 properties. And then it was kind of like, okay, let's focus on the stock stuff. Let's grow this real estate portfolio. And then from then, so when I do something, I'm like both feet in, go at it hard, right? So I joined a real estate network. I networked regularly. I like never miss meetings. In 10 years, I think I missed, when I was like the first 8 years, I think I missed maybe 3 meetings out of 8 years. So that's 8 years times 12 meetings per year. Some of those meetings were like over 3 days, right? Yeah. I was just so intentional at being the best that I could at this business, right? So I networked heavily. read several books on the subject, got familiarized. Thankfully, I went to school. I did 2 years of economics when I was in school, and that really all really helped in getting this all going. And then it's kind of like whenever I have cash available, so either from job or work or savings, then we will go buy a house. We're
Yeah.
not that complicated in the way that we invest, just because we have so many other things going on. I don't want my investing to take over, or when our mortgages come due, or when we realize one of our houses has gone up so much in value, we'll go get a new mortgage and take the proceeds from that and go buy another house.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And right now, focus is largely duplexes. I did buy a student rental just 2 years ago as well.
Yeah. You kind of touched on how your portfolio is mostly just you and your wife.
Mhm.
You haven't really done joint ventures. Just out of curiosity, is that just a personal preference, or was there like some sort of reasoning behind it?
Personal preference. I have enough people in my life that depend on me. Uh, you know, I I have two businesses. Each one, between the two of them, I have more than 10 employees. That's on top of outside contractors. Our real estate business, we have well over 100 clients. Enough people rely on me, and I don't. And part of why I do what I do, like I used to have a job. I worked for IBM for 7 years. Part of the reason I couldn't have a job was I don't think of myself as being employable. Uh, I have skills, but I don't like answering to anyone. This is part of my nature.
Yeah.
So a joint venture partner to me would be someone that I have, I have a duty of care to more
Yeah.
than almost anyone else in my life, right? Besides my wife and my kids, right? And that wasn't something I was really interested in. I didn't really want people that would people who would try to hold me accountable to anything.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm a bit of a freewheeler.
Yeah.
So, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of real estate investors and real estate agents to some extent are like that as well, especially if you're a combination of both. You don't really like being told what to do or how to do it or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
else. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of real estate investors are exactly that, which is
Mhm.
why, and entrepreneurs are like very like don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
They don't want to be controlled by anything. And then I'm not saying poo-poo on joint ventures. Like, I have lots of clients who joint venture, most because they want to scale much larger than I have,
Yeah.
right? Or they don't have the capital or credit,
Yeah.
right? So like, you run into a hard place, you do what you got to do, right?
Mhm.
So
Cool. I'm curious about your real estate sales side, the sales business. So first of all, do you still go by Mr. Hamilton, or that's done?
No, we don't give it enough credit as I should,
Yeah.
because it got me off the ground. Actually, I think it's a good point to bring up because I'm getting a lot of questions from new real estate people, new real estate agents. So I can't tell them what to do. They're always like, "What should I do?" Like, I can't tell you what to do, but this is what I did, right? I first of all, I got my license just to support myself and my family to invest in real estate, right? It was always meant to be like a private side thing. I'm not an outgoing person. I'm actually an introvert. I wasn't going to be a natural realtor who could, be a good people person, like shake hands, kiss babies, and like, hey, you want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, door knocking, that sort of stuff. I cold call, like that was never me, right? But at the networks I belong to, friends of mine that I met through the networking were like, hey, I know, I heard you got your license and I'd like to have what you have. Could you help me? And like, oh, we're cool. Like, you and I are cool. Like one of them was Andy Tran, actually. And like him and I are cool. Like, yeah, I'll help you. Right. We're friends. Right. And then, yeah. And then more and more people kept asking for my help, like getting referrals without any marketing. And then, then I realized when I was at my day job, I then started realizing I'm an analytical person, which most investors are. I could calculate that it was costing me more money to be at the job than it would be to be a practicing realtor.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I come from a business background. I went to business school. So then I have to understand the business case because I have bore risk, right? I don't gamble. I don't sports bet. I don't sit down at casino tables, right? Maybe with a very small amount that I'm willing to lose, but that's it. I hate losing money. So I looked at it from a risk perspective and from a business perspective. And at the time, no one No, there was no. This will sound funny to you because it's completely different now. But at the time, there was no real estate agent who focused on real estate investors in the city of Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah.
Right?
When was
There are
this,
people.
by the way?
This was
What year?
2010.
2010.
2010.
Okay.
Right? 2009, 2010, because that's the time I was getting my license. That's when I got licensed.
Yeah.
So I made the business decision like this. There's a gap in service for this niche.
Mhm.
So that's why I made the decision like, okay, I could maybe make a business out of this, right? Versus like you and I now can easily name 10 people
Yeah.
within 30 seconds
Yeah.
who are say they're Hamilton real estate investment experts, right? And at the time there were people that said they were experts, but if you actually looked at their transactions, they were like at least 90% regular vanilla residential buy sell someone's home.
Yeah.
Right. So like in my estimation, it was really different to be able to service an investor from an analytical standpoint versus to help someone buy and sell a home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question. I don't even know if I answered your question.
A follow-up to that would be, because I know you have like a bunch of team members now. Your team has grown over the years. So how did you grow that business? You went from being the investor specialist in Hamilton, where there were very few doing what you were doing, to growing a big team and being experts and basically an investor focused team.
I just got too busy. My first full calendar year, I did 30 deals, which is not common for a brand new realtor.
Right.
And I wasn't even that good on the marketing side.
Yeah.
I was actually pretty poor at it. On the follow-up side, I wasn't even that good either, in my opinion. I'm pretty hard on myself. Folks can't tell. And then I had a client of mine, James Maggs. He was actually asking me, and we did like, and I helped him buy like 5 properties. I'm about like my second or third year into being a realtor. And he bought 5 properties off me in 1 year. I helped him acquire, and he's anyone who doesn't know, he's rich now. Like, I sold him stuff, yes, but I wish I owned his properties instead of selling it and making a tiny little measly commission.
Yeah.
But he came to me and said, "Hey, I'm looking in getting to business. Property management makes sense to me because there's recurring income." And I said to him, "Hey, I think it can save you a lot of heartache. It's probably the same amount of work it is to sell a house as it is to manage it, and the realtors get paid a lot better.
Yeah.
So why don't you join me instead?" And so then he joined me, and I threw him to the fire. I had all these business to deal with, and then his first calendar year, he also did 30 deals. So nice. I did 30 deals, he did 30 deals. Like, we were growing crazy, and then it kept going from there. I had an assistant, he had an assistant. His assistant actually worked out to be Tammy DiTommaso, who's now one of the top agents at Rockstar Real Estate.
Yeah.
Right. So she got herself licensed as well, having gone through the hoops of being an assistant and understanding how we operate a business. She immersed herself into our world. She actually became academically. She was actually better at a lot of the stuff than we did. Right. Like Andy Tran, for example. So he's like one of the leading experts on building additions. His own words were that Tammy knows zoning better than any realtor he's ever met before.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a slight to me because he was my client before.
Yeah.
But it's actually a fair comment. Anyway, so Tammy worked her butt off, and she did 43 deals last year.
Nice.
43 deals.
That's awesome.
Right? Yeah. If anyone doesn't know, like, Tammy's part of my team as well. And now, again, she's one of the top realtors at Rockstar Real Estate as well.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that is she probably, if not all, I'm guessing a very, very big chunk of those 43 deals were with investors.
Almost entirely.
So that's pretty cool.
Like,
your most transactions are not for investors. If you look at the overall market, most sales are like regular homeowners that are moving. So for her to say, okay, I'll do 43 deals and I'm just going to focus on that minority of people that are investing, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I don't spend much time looking back and like reminiscing or appreciating what's happened. But yeah, now that you put it that way, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I know one thing
I don't know if you know, but before Tammy became James' assistant, she ran a home esthetician business.
Oh, cool.
So that's like waxing.
Yeah.
I don't know what women do. Women, I don't like waxing stuff, like bikini wax, for example. Like, that's stuff she would do, right? And that's that. And then now she's become one of the most successful realtors in all of Canada.
Yeah, 43 on your own. That's a pretty big number to do. 43
yeah.
deals. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then on top of that, we have 3 other full-time agents, and we just hired another one as well.
Cool. Awesome. I know one of the things you do well as a team and throughout your businesses is marketing, and you touched on it a little bit earlier. How did you become a good marketer? Where did you learn? Are there any systems that you follow? Do you have any tips on marketing?
So one of the best pieces of advice I got from my mentors, Tom and Nick, who own Rockstar Real Estate, was this won't sound good about me, but I graduated from business school, like one of the top business schools in Canada. So I was like, I had a meeting with Nick. I was like, I studied marketing in school. I know my stuff. And Nick is super humble, right? He's like, that's good. But he's like, from our experience, the most important thing is to be able to bring in leads at all time. And like, crap, I don't think they taught us that in school.
Yeah.
A lot of what we taught in school is largely around brand advertising.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A brand, like for a small business, a brand is largely about what people think about you.
Yeah.
Right. But if no one knows who I am, or no one knows anyone, and no one knows you, then no one has any. There's no point of brand advertising.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So then I went down this whole path of direct response marketing. So I've studied Dan Kennedy. I've gone to his events, and then I've followed many of his disciples as well, like Russell Brunson. Damn it, that's the name of the company. Russell Brunson actually bought some of Dan Kennedy's products. And digital marketer, so Ryan Dice, we've purchased and followed a lot of his stuff as well. And of course Rockstar Real Estate, Tom and Nick. I was just at their entrepreneur boot camp. I've been to every one of them. Just constant learning, always constant learning. A little bit of Gary V, and always just be learning, observing. Understand that I've been at this for a while and had a lot of success at it. I still don't think I know 90%. Right. So always reading, always consuming, always trying to apply.
So are you kind of taking the lead on the marketing for all of your businesses, or have you delegated? Do you have somebody in charge of marketing?
Used to for especially the real estate side, and about half of the Stockhacker Academy business. We've actually, starting last year, we actually did a reorganization. So Cherry is actually basically our chief marketing officer now. So we have a marketing department. I don't even know how many employees we have, somewhere around 10. We have a marketing department of about 10 people. So it's almost as if we have a marketing agency in-house that supports 3 businesses. Yeah. So Cherry is she's academically very strong too, which makes her and she enjoys marketing. She enjoys the creative side of it and the scientific side of it. So she loves to read, and her ability to take in theory and apply is faster than I can do it. So it was a natural fit for her. I'm more like what we call a visionary. I come up with crazy ideas. I talk to people, work on relationships. Golf a little bit when I can.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a couple. Well, speaking of podcasts, that was one of the things I want to ask you about. So how did you start your podcast? Why did you start it? And how were you able to grow it to where it is today?
I don't have any good answers. Because I don't even know. So it started with the blog first off. In 2010, when I got licensed, I started blogging as well, because that was one of the things I learned from Tom and Nick. For example, it was to put out educational content and then ask people for their email addresses, right? So I actually started with writing a blog. So mostly for the most part, I was just sharing. I love to learn and I love to share. So it was natural for me to always be reading news or reading news, local news, especially specific to Hamilton. So my website was mrhamilton.ca. It's still there. I'd read articles, and then I'd just have blog posts, and it'd be like I'd really give like 3 bullet points and implications to real estate investing, and then here's the article. Go read it for yourself, right? And then I said, if you want to get this in your email inbox, I'll send you a newsletter for free, along with other people that I've been sending this to. Which was really, the newsletter was just the blog post.
Yeah.
So it was the same content.
Yeah.
So, but just that we would send it to your inbox. You'd get it every week, and I did that for 6 years, and then my stats were trailing. Like there was less interest each week in the blog posts. And then, so again, always learning, always out there interested in like doing something new. So, so I actually looked at first, before podcasting, I actually looked into getting a radio show, right? It's pretty cost prohibitive, right? To do just a really local radio show. It's quite cost prohibitive. And then this whole podcasting thing started. So this is 2016. So it wasn't that big. It wasn't that big back then.
Right.
And again, in the real estate space, there was only really one popular podcast for Canadians in the real estate space. That's my buddy Rob Brake, right? And he started in 2014. I started in 2016, and then it was just more of the same. I'm not an expert, so I'd always invite guests on to share. I always, again, someone who always wants to learn. I'd invite guests on from people I want to learn from, right? So, for example, like my first guests were like Don Campbell, the all-time best-selling author in the real estate space for Canada, among Canadians. And then I had Julie Broad on, who was a very, very successful real estate coach and an author, and just teaching authors at the time. And then I had Ruben Furtado on pretty early as well. He was like one of the best high-end flippers I've ever met in my life. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, it was just out of I think the show's been successful just because I'm curious, and if people appreciate the questions that I ask. And the funny thing is, I don't prepare anything for shows.
Yeah.
People ask like for their questions in advance, and like, no one gets their questions in advance.
Yeah.
But I've had this come up a couple times, and the feedback that I get from people is like, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question because I had the exact same question." And like, well, I had the question because really, you and I are the same person. We have the same interests. Yeah. Right. We're like-minded. So yeah. And I think that's why the podcast has been successful. We don't do any paid promotions or anything like that. We don't have any people that like push it out.
I was just going to ask you, what kind of marketing have you done for it? Or has it's just grown? People have shared it and that's it?
It's kind of like the real estate market. The market's just grown.
Yeah.
Right. I know people share it. And I do make an effort to offer a variety, and again, always stay ahead of the curve, right? Like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I had an episode out, which I'm sure will upset a lot of mortgage people. I had a gentleman from a Schedule A lender who can offer mortgages to folks who invest in corporations. And I'm like, whoops, how come no one's ever talked about this before?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you and I, like we've been at this for a while, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, I didn't know that. He's like, I didn't know that either. That's why I joined. And he works for the bank that, has Halifax as the capital, that one. I don't know if I'm allowed to name names. I don't want to promote anyone either.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But I got a lot of feedback on that because like people are like, it's funny because like serious real estate investors, several realtors messaged me like, yo, that episode was awesome. I had no idea. Yeah. Right. Other real estate professionals did not know. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know either. That's why I had to put it on.
They didn't know that basically you're talking about Scotiabank, that you can get financing through a corporation through Scotiabank.
Yes. But you have to go direct to them.
Yes. Right? That's the thing, because if you go to a mortgage broker, they'll often say, no, we can't do it through Scotiabank. But there's like all these workarounds that they can do and whatever else. But they don't tell you that if you go straight to the bank or to a rep from the bank, you can get it done. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So you also talked a little bit about Stockhacker. How did you get involved with that, and why?
So it's actually at one of the real estate networking groups that I belong to. I met a gentleman there who's quite successful as a real estate investor. And then one day, and he's a sharing guy, which is one of the wonderful things about the real estate community is how sharing the community is.
Yeah.
And he was saying to me, like, "Do you know what I do for a living?" And like, you do some stock stuff."
Yeah.
He goes, "No, it's not what I do." And then they showed me, right? And like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." He goes, "If you're interested, go read these 2 books." So it's like, oh, immediately I bought 2 books. Uh, Derek Foster's Money for Nothing and Lee Lowell's Get Rich with Options,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I did nothing. I did nothing for 2 more years.
Yeah.
And then after those 2 years, I ran into that same friend. We just happened to be at the same restaurant. And he said to me, "Yo, you need to be doing this." Out of the kindness of his heart, he just like, "Hey, can I join you guys?" Because he'd finished his lunch meeting. I was in the middle of my lunch meeting. He said, "Yeah, sure, sit down. I haven't seen you in years."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Yeah. Have you started doing this? Doing stock options, stock hacking, as we call it?" I was like, "No, I've been too busy." He's like, "I got Adriano to do this." He's our electrician because we're both real estate investors in Hamilton. So he's like, and we use the same electrician. He goes, "Yeah, of course I know Python." And he's like, "I got him to make 6 figures last year." I'm like, "No way." Right. So I call Adriano. He's like, "Yeah, it's been amazing." I'm like, "Okay, if you could do it, maybe I can do this."
Yeah.
Right. And then I got into it, did it myself, made some money, talked to a lot of people. There's actually a lot of people in the real estate community who are stock hacking already, who just aren't very open about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then so I asked lots of them. I asked a ton of people. And they're like, "Yeah, it's great. Right? It's a great little side hustle." And I was like, "We have to share this with the world then."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then we did. We pitched it at my Wealth Hawker conference back in before, thank goodness, pre-pandemic, 2019.
Yeah.
And ever since we've had 800 students through it. We've had some. So I'll just say we've had some ridiculous amount of success. The market's part of it, but my kid cousin, for example, like he made 50,000. He made 50% his first year in 2020. He made 50% again last year, return on his money, and that's all cash. Right? I had a client visit me last week for lunch. He just bought a mansion. Right? And to be fair, that's not entirely stock hacking. He also was a real estate client as well.
Yeah.
And these are his wife's words. I'm not someone who likes to talk about what we do. For anyone who knows, I'm a high D in DISC. So high Ds do not like talking about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll use someone else's words. So my client's wife said, "Thank them for all the wealth they created for us." Right? And again, they just bought a mansion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's something I think that's starting to really become popular. Like people are curious about this. Everybody's talking about the strategy. So more and more people are learning about it. And I'll include the website in the show notes so that if anyone's interested, they can check it out. So as part of the podcast preparation, I always ask if there are any questions that you'd like to be asked about. And I know you mentioned one thing here about asking you why you don't raise rents or invest in apartment buildings. So let's hear the answer to that.
Oh man, some people are getting mad at me about this stuff. Okay, so I was having dinner with a friend who's a pretty successful real estate investor, and he was telling me about this apartment building he was buying out in the East in the Maritimes, right? And he said, "I'm gonna buy. The rents are so low. I'm gonna buy it for this, and I can raise the rents by like 50% within 2 years." And then after that dinner, I was like, so I always say to my son, because he's my youngest, and like whenever he hits his sister, does something really stupid, like draw on the wall. I'm like, Bruce, who did you help and who did you hurt? Right? When he hits his sister, like, who did you help and who did you hurt? Hurt his sister. Now, in the real estate story I just shared, if you raise the rent 50% on an apartment building, of course the investor makes lots of money. So we know who's going to win in that, the investor and their partners, right? Who loses in that situation, right? Like tenants are statistically the most vulnerable sector of people, of society, right? When you remove like low rent apartments, they never get replaced, right? And the people who can only afford those, they get displaced, right? So for me, I'm like, that doesn't jive with my values, right? Because my value is about helping people. So from a real estate perspective, I'm only interested in creating supply. So like basement suites, for example, right? Majority of my properties have basement suites, or I have student rentals. Again, I create supply. There's more housing, more people, more higher density for each of my properties. Soon enough, I'll garden suite, right? So I'll create another apartment on one property. So it took a single family home, turned into 3 homes, right? I've improved, some people might doubt it. I'll say I've improved society a really, really tiny little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Versus if I just invest in apartment buildings, how did you improve society? Right. That's just my own opinion. I'm looking for an answer on that myself. I'm talking to Pierre Paul Turgeon next week about it, and I'll talk to other multifamily investors. But again, like you can argue that by increasing the price of apartment buildings, more will get built. I don't know. Maybe. I don't really know how the argument. I don't know if you have an answer, George.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think, okay, like there are certain situations where you have these units that are occupied with people that are paying very low rent, but they're also not necessarily living in the cleanest way. So maybe they have bed bugs, or maybe they sell drugs. Like, not to put everyone under the same umbrella, but it's possible that they sell drugs, or they're constantly fighting and yelling with people, so it's disturbing other people. It's also potentially bothering the neighbors who might have young kids and they don't want to be around a drug dealer next door. So by fixing up the units or increasing the rents or doing whatever, you could be helping people in that way, helping out the neighbors. And
it's just for my investment style, I need to be much more 100% clear on that this is helping.
Right. Yeah.
Because that your use case does happen. I know it does. And the use case happens where like a property, like, say an apartment building, like the ceilings, the roof is collapsed.
Yeah.
And the property is not habitable 100%. Like, yes, that's fantastic. You are creating supply. But for like a property that's just like cosmetically tired, right? All you do is just cosmetically update and raise rents, right? How does that help society?
Right. Yeah, as society as a whole, no, not necessarily, probably not, but it just helps that area, that specific pocket, that neighborhood, or whatever. Yeah.
And I'm not judging, folks. I don't claim to have all the answers, right? I truly believe in let live and let live. And again, even if I did judge, who cares? Who cares my opinion?
Yeah. Okay, so last question. Tell me a little bit about your charity.
Yes. So in turn, Cherry and I, my wife and I, we like to help people. So it's just like take the apartment building example. Like, why would I be hurting the people I'm trying to help?
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't. I just think it just doesn't feel. That doesn't make any sense to hurt the people I'm trying to help and then just give them back money, like give them back food and clothing. So it doesn't jive in my mind, my very small mind. So yeah, charity work we started in 2014. I volunteered for 4 years for a Tony Robbins charity, the Basket Brigade out of Toronto, and I would go with my brother. I'd bring friends as well. And then one year, the last time I did it, they had my brother and I drove to, so at the time I lived in Hamilton or Burlington. They had us drive to the other side of the Don Valley Parkway, the east side of the Don Valley Parkway. My brother lived in Milton, right? So like we live in the west. Why are we going to the east, right? I don't want to do this anymore. This is the last time I'm doing this, but I still have room in my heart, in my pocketbook for charity work.
Right.
And there's plenty of need here in Hamilton. So let's just focus our efforts on Hamilton. And so my friend Roger's a property manager and real estate investor in Hamilton. I moved out of Hamilton, I think, at that point. So he had more, and he had kids in school, so he had better boots on ground. They said, "Hey, can you go to your school principal and ask if they could give us like 3 names each, people who need some help on Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
right? And then we'll donate we'll donate Thanksgiving dinner to them."
Cool.
But you and I are really successful. So Roger and I, like you and I, are really successful real estate investors. So we're not going to say no to anybody. Okay, so
Hmm.
don't say no to anybody. So he came back to me the next day. He goes, "We have 18."
Yeah.
I know I went for 6. We have 18.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit. So I started calling in favors among the real estate community, among my clients and my team. And then it wasn't my idea. The team said that let's grow this 2x each event. So the first time was at Thanksgiving 2014. So the next event we did was Christmas 2014. So the first time we did 16, the second time we did 32, and then Easter 2015 we did 75.
Nice.
So we kept doubling.
Yeah.
And it got pretty crazy. Yeah. Our biggest, we did over 300 families.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. The Hamilton definitely is a place where people could use help. All over, really, all over the world. There's always going to be people that need help. So it's really good that you're contributing in that way. And I'd love to check it out. I know I've kind of heard about what you do, but I'd love to check it out and see if I can help out as well whenever you're working on it next. So yeah, thanks for helping out and doing good things for others. And I appreciate all your time today.
George, before we go, actually, one thing about the charity work.
Yeah.
No different than the investors and entrepreneurs think the same way. I think this is how we think because we're supposed to be like-minded. Is we all take care of ourselves because we know we're not going to take care. We can't depend on the government to do it.
Yeah.
So no different with the charity. I wasn't going to wait around for the government to help the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, during COVID, we had to pivot. So we've actually pivoted to providing mainly winter boots now and winter coats, and like sweatshirts and stuff, warm clothing, brand new clothing, especially the footwear. We donated over 700 pairs of boots for Christmas.
Nice.
Because when's the government going to do something like that? The government does plenty up, by the way. I think the government does as much as they can, but I always believe that us private citizens need to step up. Mm-hmm. So this is just what we do.
Awesome.
No different than people taking care of their own financial futures, right? You got to step up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If everybody just did something small, then the world would be a lot different. So totally understand that. Yeah.
Start small. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to think big too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So before we end things, do you want to tell me about the services you provide and the best way for people to reach you?
Services we provide. So we specialize in investment real estate in Hamilton, and also the Hamilton surrounding areas. So we go as far as Niagara Falls, and we do a lot of Brantford as well. We have Stockhacker Academy, which is largely a stock education business, and then we add on to that options. I know it sounds complicated, but my kid cousin's a full-time musician. Adriana, my friend, is an electrician. If you have the IQ to be an electrician or a full-time musician, you can do this too. And of course, we have our Wealth Hacker conference. We haven't done much to announce it yet in 2022, November 2022, which will be this fall. Cool. Yeah, it'll be pretty cool. So, I'm looking forward to that because I miss seeing people, and I'm hoping that becomes like the reunion for real estate investors and to come back in full force, see each other. And it'll be just like a gigantic family reunion of real estate investors from across the country. Yeah,
for sure. Just very quickly before I let you go, one of the last real estate events I went to was Durham REI.
Yeah.
And Cherry was speaking that night. So this was like just when COVID, people were starting to hear a little bit about COVID. And I just remember Cherry being so nervous. She's like, hey, I don't want to get close to anyone. I'm just here to speak. And that was one of the last events I went to. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you.
It's crazy times.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you sharing your story and telling us a little bit about your businesses. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Well Off Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then I'd really appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes and let us know your thoughts. In order for us to get a larger audience, it's really important to have reviews, so your support is extremely appreciated. And also, don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, I'm George Masri. Have a great day.